Our history is full of some interesting events and accidents that have made an impact on the flow of centuries. However, we can highlight a few of them that were strong enough to change the world and how we view it nowadays. Ever wondered what lies behind the biblical story of Sodom? In today's video, we'll talk about how a giant space rock demolished an ancient Middle Eastern city and everyone in it. Ever heard of el-Hammam? It's an archaeological place in Jordan, near the eastern part of the lower Jordan Valley, next to the mouth of Jordan River. This site has archaeological remains that more or less tells a story about the civilization that once lived there. Archaeologists claim that these remains belong to the Chalcolithic, Early, Intermediate, and Middle Bronze Age, and to Iron Age too. What exactly happened 3,600 years ago? About 3,600 years ago, the inhabitants that once lived on the remains of an ancient Middle Eastern city, el-Hammam, were minding their business, having no idea what kind of danger was coming their way. You know a disaster is about to happen when somebody mentions a space rock. So a massive, icy space rock was approaching el-Hammam with an unimaginably high speed of 38,000 miles per hour, which is 61,000 kilometers per hour. This rock flashed through the atmosphere and suddenly exploded about 4 kilometers above the ground. After the explosion, this rock turned into a massive fireball with a blast that was way more, like 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima atomic bomb. The impact itself was so big and huge that people did not really have any time to realize what was going on. In shock, they were blinded instantly. Even though the explosion was about 2.5 miles above the ground, it made the air temperature increase drastically above 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 2,000 degrees Celsius. As a result of the rapid temperature rise, all the clothes and wood were on fire, swords, spears, and pottery started to melt, and in no time, the whole city was in flames. A few seconds passed, and there was a massive wave from all the shock that smashed into the city. Scientists claim that this shockwave was moving at about 740 miles per hour, which is 12,000 kilometers per hour. That's a lot. Given those numbers, it was even more powerful than the most destructive tornado to ever be recorded. The powerful wind blew the whole city in an instant, like it was nothing but more than a dandelion. Deadly wind destroyed every building. Nobody survived this disaster. All 8,000 people died with their animals. About 22 kilometers, 14 miles away from el-Hammam, there was a biblical city called Jericho. About a minute later, the winds from the explosion destroyed the walls of Jericho and the city was burned to the ground. You may think that all this sounds just like a 2012 movie and there would be no way to know what happened 3,600 years ago in such detail. So, how do we know this disaster actually happened? So it took about 15 years of painstaking excavations and the hard work of hundreds of scientists. A profound analysis of remaining material was conducted by the experts in more than 10 states of the United States, as well as the Czech Republic and Canada. Scientists from different fields were involved in this research, and when the evidence was finally published in the Journal of Scientific Reports, it had about 21 co-authors, including medical doctors, sedimentologists, geologists, archaeologists, geochemists, chemists, geomorphologists, mineralogists, physicists, cosmic impact experts, and paleobotanists. That's how the exact picture of this disastrous event was built and brought to us. During this research, a couple of years ago, when the archaeologists were studying the excavations of the ruined city, they saw that there was a big, almost 5-foot thick layer of dark charcoal, melted mud bricks, and ash. It became clear that there must have been a firestorm to destroy everything to this extent. We can't be sure about what happened, but scientists claim that there was no way this destruction layer was caused by an earthquake, volcano, or warfare. None of them would be able to melt metal and mud bricks. Impact experts have built a machine called Online Impact Calculator, which allows them to estimate every possible detail about the cosmic impact event. As it turned out, the el-Hammam disaster was caused by a small asteroid. That asteroid was very similar in nature to the one that caused the Tunguska event in 1908, and scientists assume that this asteroid could have been a much smaller version of the gigantic rock that caused the dinosaur extinction 65 million years ago. Were there any eyewitnesses after the blast? Do you remember that in the beginning of the video, we asked a question about where did the biblical story of Sodom come from? Well, it's quite possible that there were at least some surviving eyewitnesses, and the description of this incident was passed over the generations as the story of God punishing biblical Sodom. The Bible talks about the civilization near the Black Sea that was destroyed because the stones and fire fell from the sky. If we consider it as an ancient eyewitness account, the el-Hammam disaster can be considered as the second oldest disaster of human civilization by a cosmic impact after the destruction of the Abu Huraira village in Syria about 12,800 years ago. So what exactly is the Tunguska event? The Tunguska event is an incident covered with mystery. It definitely had a lot of impact, and to this day, we cannot say 100% what had happened. It was a very disastrous explosion that happened at about 7:14 a.m. on June 30th, 1908. It had an approximate altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers, and it was spread over 2,000 square kilometers, which is 500,000 acres. Tunguska is located very close to the Podokamenaya Tunguska River in central Siberia and Russia. The blast was so disastrous that it took its place in the top 10 of the most powerful explosions. The force of the explosion was as much as 15 megatons of TNT, which is 1,000 times stronger than the explosion caused by the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. It's assumed that the extent of the explosion was very close to that of el-Hammam's explosion. Well, fortunately, this area was not really inhabited by people, and there were no actual witnesses who could tell exactly what happened, so unfortunately, there was no helpful evidence to lead scientists to the cause of the explosion. Later, scientists classified this event as the largest impact event ever, which means that the interaction between two astronomical objects had occurred, like an asteroid and Earth. If you want to start a conversation with anyone in the asteroid business, all you have to say is Tunguska, explains the manager of the Near-Earth Object Office at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Don Yimmons. It is the only entry of a large meteorite we have in the modern era with first-hand accounts. It's also very interesting that the condition in which the trees were found after the explosion could only mean that shockwaves that destroyed the area were extremely fast and powerful. Those trees acted as markers pointing directly away from the blast's epicenter, said Yimmons. Later, when the team arrived at ground zero, they found the trees there standing upright, but their limbs and bark had been stripped away. They looked like a forest of telephone poles. It's noteworthy that the impact was so strong and rapid that it mostly destroyed the branches on trees. There was no time for impact to transport from the branches to the stem, so as a result, most of the stems were left more or less intact. Some locals in the area believed it was the work of God. Again, there was no real proof that an impact crater existed, so nothing really can prove that there indeed was an interaction between two huge objects. After some time, a new theory was suggested. Maybe an asteroid blasted over the Earth and it resulted in destruction of Siberia as an after effect. We don't know for sure what truly happened, as it's just a theory, but many scientists claim that these kind of explosions are extremely rare and may happen once every 3,000 years. So does it mean that we may have one more Tunguska event in the future? The size of the Tunguska event and the one that destroyed el-Hammam are capable of disastrous impact and are a threat to modern civilizations. As for now, we know that there are more than 26,000 asteroids near Earth. There are many more that remain undetected, and some of them may even be heading toward Earth at this very moment. The most dangerous are those that we cannot detect, and unless we have more advanced orbiting or ground-based telescopes that would find these asteroids, we are never fully safe. On this note, we end our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.